Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. Hey Jason, I know Olympic weightlifters, swimmers, and every physically demanding sport in the Olympics are on drugs, but what are your thoughts on less demanding sports such as archery and bowling? Do you think they could be on different types of drugs, IG, Ritalin? Thanks in advance. Yeah, I've competed in shooting sports actually as young as 12 and 13 years old. And I can tell you absolutely that for any sort of sport that requires you to maintain a low heart rate and maintain concentration, again, archery, bowling, shooting, things like that, any drug that calms you down is an absolute performance enhancing drug. Beta blockers are downright amazing. Beta blockers can absolutely tighten up your groups when shooting a rifle, a handgun, a bow, and I would assume throwing darts, using a bowling ball, everything else. Again, anything that can bring your resting heart rate down and bring your adrenaline down is going to be a very powerful performance enhancing drug. And I would say that for sports like that, it is just as powerful. Anything like that, like a beta blocker, is just as powerful of a PED as anabolics are for sports that need size and strength. Absolutely. All right, next question. Greetings from the UK, Jason. I want to ask, is it possible to grip the bar too close when benching? I grip it at a width where my elbows tuck right on my side. However, since I started doing it a month ago, I've been feeling discomfort when doing dumbbell shoulder presses and etc. Can this be the cause, or can it be because of the reps I'm bringing it a bit below my sternum and not right on it? Question's worded a little difficult to grasp, but I don't know what sort of pain you're talking about as far as your overhead press, so I really can't tell you. You didn't say where the discomfort is. But as far as gripping the bar too close on a closed grip bench press, is it possible? Yes, absolutely, and I see it all the time in gyms. All the time. I've even seen it on YouTube. I mean, Jeff Side was a perfect example. I saw him do it too close. If you can't touch the bar to your body, it's too close. In other words, it can damage your wrists. It can cause inflammation in your wrist. Can actually potentially harm connective tissue if you are gripping the bar so close that your hands can't clear your rib cage. In other words, a closed grip bench press is usually shoulder width or slightly inside of shoulder width, but the bar itself is still supposed to make contact with your torso. It's got to make physical contact, and if your hands actually physically get between you and the bar, it not only puts stress on the connective tissue, it's going to reduce the amount of weight you can use, it's going to reduce the range of motion, and it's going to give you less overall tricep and pectoral development because you simply can't do as much work. You're reducing range of motion, you're putting more strain on your actual wrist instead of being able to put more stress on the muscles themselves that you want to grow. So yeah, it's absolutely possible, and not only possible, it's something I see all the time. But if you are gripping it wide enough, the bar can physically come down and make contact with your body, then no, that should be perfectly fine. It shouldn't be a problem at all. All right, next question. I was planning to start your novice program once I get a home gym set up. However, I won't have access to a hyperextension machine. Would I be better off doing band pull-throughs or good mornings to replace them? Honestly, the hyperextensions are there just to make sure that you get additional lower back development because there's not a lot of lower back work. If someone's already been working out for a little while and they've already built a base in their core, it's probably really an optional exercise in there. But people who are starting out, noobs, I mean, I'm talking about people who are deadlifting less than 100 pounds for their work sets, you know, or 100 pounds or 120 pounds for your work set, something like that. You have no base built, that's additional hypertrophy work for that area. Someone who's already been training a few months probably doesn't necessarily need them anymore. But if you wanted to include them for the extra work for your spinal erectors and everything, band pull-throughs, if you've got access to bands and you can do pull-throughs, that's a perfectly acceptable substitute. In fact, someone had asked before, because they said their gym had cables, could they use the low cable to do cable pull-throughs instead? And I'd answered that in the previous Q&A that yes, absolutely, that's totally fine, and it's an acceptable substitute because that exercise does the exact thing I want the hyperextensions to do also. So it's again, perfectly acceptable substitute, so go ahead and do that. All right, next question. Here's an interesting question I just asked myself sitting waiting for the bus after a gym session. How functional is weight training in everyday modern life? We don't fight animals with our bare hands anymore. What is brute strength worth? I want to be strong. I am strong, but to what end other than that? Well, we don't fight animals with our bare hands until we have to fight animals with our bare hands, don't we? It does come in handy if you get attacked by a dog or a wild animal or even another human being. You know, brute strength can absolutely come in handy if you have another human being attack you. And you know what? Even if you live in an urban area, yeah, you're no longer under threats from wild animals other than maybe someone's dog, maybe someone's Rottweiler or something. But you're also under threat from attack by human wild animals too, aren't you? Can come in handy. What about in an emergency situation if you do have to pick something up? How about the fact that your work capacity is higher if you want to carry in all the groceries? How about as we start to get older, all that weight training you did when younger will keep you functional and able to do day-to-day things that maybe your grandparents can't do. If you think about it right now, well, think about the people you see out there over the years who stayed serious about their lifting for 50 years. They're just as strong and sometimes stronger and more fit than the average 20-year-old. They're able to do normal day-to-day activities for generations, decades longer than the average person as a result of it. So these things absolutely do matter in your day-to-day life. And it comes down to other stuff, emergencies though still. Functional strength comes in handy if you fall down, get hurt, get knocked to the ground, get hit by a car. People who are strong and have muscle mass are more likely to survive being hit by a car. They're less likely to have broken bones from impacts. Just overall in general, in short, as Mark Ripto said, strong people are harder to kill. So yeah, it absolutely matters. We don't live in the safe, utopian, civilized world that a lot of people would like to think that we do. People get hit by cars every day. They fall down every day. People get attacked by other people physically every day. Having strength is absolutely useful. All right, next question. As fruits start to ripen, they start to convert more sugars, which is why they become sweeter. So my question would be calorie content of the fruit, as in raising calories, and would there be an optimal ripeness to eat a fruit for best macros and nutrients overall? No, you're not going to see a significant shift in calories because it's just starches being converted into sugars. You know what? You convert starches into sugar in your digestive system. The only time you would see more calorie conversion from some process going on in a plant is if the fiber in it breaks down into starches or sugars in some way. And when that happens, and again, there's not a significant amount of fiber in fruit anyways. It's not like a banana has 20 calories worth of fiber stored away that you can't digest. It suddenly can magically appear. You're just seeing starches in them break down into simpler forms. That's all it is. Caloric content is the same, and quite frankly, when it comes to things like talking about sugar found in whole foods like that, as far as them being problematic or something you should be worried about, they really aren't. You would have to eat a hell of a lot of bananas or watermelon before the actual sugar content in there becomes the same sort of concerns you would have from drinking a bunch of soda or heaping tablespoons of sugar on stuff. At the end of the day, your body burns those things just fine. And like I said, it's pretty difficult to consume an excess amount of fruit to the point to where you should really be concerned about it. Now, I'm not throwing it out there as a challenge like hold my beer. Jason said it's really difficult to do. Hold my beer. I'm going to show him. I'm not challenging you guys to do that. I'm just saying that it's hard to do. Most people really shouldn't be worried about stuff like that. All right, next question. Hey Jason, you might have already discussed this before, but on your novice program, could I substitute normal rows with Pendlay Rows? The regular version seems awkward and sometimes I can't tell if I completed a rep or not. Also, what about using a supine grip? Thanks and great job, coach. Yeah, I've said before, Pendlay Rows are acceptable. I've gone back and forth on that, but ultimately, you know what, if you don't like standing barbell rows, conventional rows, and you want to do Pendlay Rows instead, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and do Pendlay Rows. I like Pendlay Rows personally. As far as the other question goes, supine Pendlay Rows, that would be with, again, the underhand grip. It's an interesting question. You know what? I've never seen or heard of anyone doing supine grip Pendlay Rows. Normally, I tell guys on standing barbell rows don't do the underhand grip. I've just known of people who've had bicep tears and other things from it. But because you're not necessarily putting that stretch on there, or using ultra heavy weight on a Pendlay row, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give that the go ahead. I'm thinking about it from a biomechanics perspective. Now that you mentioned it, because I thought about that when I read the question, I'm going to go out there and say that, yeah, Pendlay Rows done with an underhand grip are probably acceptable. In some cases, there might be some advantages to that. So normally I give underhand grip rows a red light. I'm going to go ahead and give it a green light on Pendlay Rows. I don't think you're going to have any elevated risk of injury from it, and it might actually help your bicep development a little bit. It's really not a bad idea. In fact, thank you for bringing it up. I've never heard of anyone doing that. And yeah, I could get behind that. I could absolutely get behind that. All right, next question and last question of the week. I know that you're a video game and fitness enthusiast, and I am too, so here's my multi-party question. Favorite lift, favorite class, and why? I personally have to go with the snatch and shaman. Good question. My favorite lift, the deadlift. The deadlift. I could argue that closed grip bench press or closed grip floor press is a real close second, but the deadlift is my favorite lift, and it's because it's the most overall useful lift. It has the most carryover to anything you could think of in the real world. Just picking up a heavy weight, you get to use some really heavy weights. It's really tough. It's really challenging, and I just love the way the bar feels when it bends in my hands. I love the deadlift. I always have and probably always will. Favorite class, since you said shaman, I'm going to assume we're talking about something like WoW. I'm going to go with priest. MMO type games, I like healing. Not saying I haven't tanked or done deeps or any of that. I prefer healing. I've been the most successful in games like that playing the priest as far as previously in-game raiding, arenas, things like that. Priest was my go-to class, and I enjoy that one the most. And yeah, I generally like healers in those sort of games. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.